Welcome to SVG-TV News for Friday 19th October 2018. I'm Investor Bowens with the details. Government has arrived at an agreement with the 3 investors who will soon take over operations at the Buckermont Bay Resort. Today, 2 of the investors, Jonathan Mill and Barry Ferdinand, along with the bankruptcy trustee Brian Glasgow, met with the Prime Minister to decide on the way forward. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said the government will also have shares in the resort.
The value which is paid for the rest of the 30-something acres, since it's smack in the middle, and we would acquire that lot 20 for the purposes of tourism development and to be part of this Buckermont development for the new purchasers, and we will sell the new purchasers that which we acquire at the price at which we acquire. However, just in case that what the government acquires it for is subject to challenge, we will be getting, which is agreed that we will get from the government, that is, from KPMG, the trustees in bankruptcy, an indemnity to the amount of $1 million US.
As it regards the government lands occupied by the resort, Prime Minister Gonsalves said a deal has been worked out in which the government also stands to benefit.
For the 4.5+ acres of land which I've just described, which the government owns, not the lot 20, I just spoke to you about the lot 20, the 4 acres which has a different arrangement in terms of acquisition. What we actually own at the moment, the government, 4.5+ acres, the consideration we'll take for that would be 7.25%, which we'll have as non-voting preference shares. Clearly, when dividends are declared, we are at the head of the fountain, and the government will have a value to the tune of 7.25% of the company. We'll transfer those lands to the company, and we will have that percentage shareholding. We will the price for the lease of the land, for the lease of the seabed, nominally would, if we were to do a lease for that, would be just $200 a month for the 3,000 square feet. So what we have done is that we will permit the use of it as part and parcel of what we're not transferring the seabed, we're transferring the 4.5+ acres to them, but we would allow the use of the seabed within that same consideration of 7.25% share.
The bankruptcy trustee for the resort, Brian Glasgow, said getting to this stage was a lengthy process as they had to consider the 3,000 investors in the United Kingdom who have shares in the resort.
Now, the appointment of a trustee in bankruptcy was facilitated by the investors in the Buckermont Bay Resort project. And there were approximately 3,000 persons, most of them based in the UK, who would have invested, in some cases, their life savings, pension funds into that project, in the expectation that they would have been receiving villas or apartments. As is now well known, that project went heads up, and under the terms of the Act which deals with insolvency matters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act, the investors had the opportunity to select a bankruptcy trustee. So through a court-managed process, they appointed myself as the bankruptcy trustee, and I'm supported by a team of colleagues from KPMG offices in the UK, because most of the investors are UK-based, from Barbados, and Barbados because a lot of investment was also made in Barbados. The company has also investments in St. Lucia. So our role as bankruptcy trustee, my role as bankruptcy trustee, is to get the best benefit possible for the investors. So it was not just a matter of finding the first investor who wanted to come along and take over the property and give it to them. We had to go through a process of making sure that whatever decisions we took were in the best interests of these approximately 3,000 persons in the UK.
Glasgow said though the negotiations with the new investors are in the early stages, they have made significant strides in that they will soon hand over the operations of the resort to them.
Bukama Bay Resort seems destined for a successful future. Of course, we are still reasonably early into negotiations and discussions, but as I said, things look very positive. So we are hopeful that within a matter of weeks the resort will be handed over to the group, to the new consortium, who will themselves announce their plans and a prospective opening date for the resort.
Meanwhile, two of the investors present at today's meeting with the Prime Minister and the bankruptcy trustee said they are satisfied with the outcome of the negotiations thus far. Barry Ferdinand admitted that it was a hard decision for him to make to invest in the resort. However, with the support of his family and the other investor, Jonathan Mill, he was happy to get on board.
As was said, I've been in business quite a few years, probably about 30 years to be exact, and this has been the most difficult transaction I've ever been involved with. I'm probably involved with it from an emotional standpoint as opposed to a business transaction, because it had so many facets to the actual project that if it was a normal transaction, I think it would have been a lot difficult to get it over the line. But just to talk about myself personally, I'm a Vincentian and I've got a vested interest in this project working. I've got family on the island. In actual fact, a lot of you may know my cousin Derry Williams. He's the man who's dragged me into looking at doing some investments on a country.
Ferdinand, the property developer, thanked the Prime Minister for his support and expressed high expectations for the transformation of the resort. He said they will ensure that the resort regains its 5-star status.
From myself as a person, we'll be laying out our plans for the resort in the next coming weeks. We have a lot of good options to keep the country involved, and one of the areas that we're looking at is creating a board. We want corporate governance. I think from the last entity, it was a closed book. This will be an open book, hence the partnership with the government in 7%. We're looking at appointing 2 senior local stakeholders. I won't name them because I don't want to compromise them. They've actually given us indications that they'd like to do that, and they will be individuals you all know, and you all know will be significant in looking at us as individuals, because I always say that, you know, if you lead an open book and you can be checked, or make a better company and a better person of you. So I'm looking forward to the challenge, and I will say it's going to be a challenge. It's not going to be easy. We have 3,000 people to talk to about, you know, they've lost their livelihoods, and we're going to try and help most of them to try and reclaim it. We're going to do what we can to develop what will be a 5-star resort, because I think it needs it. I'm very privileged to be able to be in a position whereby we can develop a 5-star resort. I'm privileged that I've got the backing of the government, and I'm privileged that my cousin heads up the National Bank. So, you know, we've got all the key stakeholders here to make it work.
Investor Jonathan Mill said he is also looking to a fruitful partnership in the resort, which he said will add to the further development of SVG's tourism industry. A number of stakeholders today gave their input on how they can help improve the multi-hazard early warning systems in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The stakeholders drawn from government ministries and civil society were meeting to roll out a plan on advancing multi-hazard early warning systems in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The consultation was organized by the National Emergency Management Organization NEMO, the Caribbean Disaster Management Agency CIDIMA, and the United Nations Development Program, the UNDP. NEMO's director Michelle Forbes said there are gaps and weaknesses in the systems, but they are doing the best with what they have.
We have to tout our hats and say we have not done too badly in the early warning system, for example, for volcano hazard. I know we are not going to go to sleep overnight and wake up and the volcano is erupting. So we have to give credit to the governments over the years and the successive institutions that have worked towards improving our early warning system in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
4 elements were examined today. They were disaster risk management and knowledge, detection and monitoring, analyzing and forecasting health hazards and consequences, and the timely dissemination of information while also looking at preparedness responses. Deputy Executive Director of CIDIMA, Elizabeth Riley, called for more investment to be made to strengthen the local warning systems.
Be prepared to invest in strengthening the 4 elements of early warning systems. In other words, we will be guided by the gaps as presented by Ms. Forbes later on today, but we also have to ensure that we allocate our resources, human, physical, and financial, to bring about the changes that are required. Before I conclude, I wish to indicate that CIDIMA supports the need for standards as reflected in the multi-hazard early warning systems checklist that has been applied at the national level in 4 countries, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines, over the past 3 months.
The UNDP has been supporting SVG on climate change matters, and more recently through a Japan climate change project. And its resident representative Chisa Mikami encouraged the participants to make an input that will strengthen the current warning system.
I will ask of you all to respond, to plan, to implement, and to advance an agenda to strengthen our integrated early warning systems for more effective disaster risk reduction in the Caribbean through knowledge and through tool transfer, and markedly advance MHEWS in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And why? Because we all believed it had to be achieved, and we acted to do so for the future we see.
The warning systems in SVG are monitored by NEMO and the Met Office, and also via an app, the CAP app. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves noted the timeliness of the early warning systems and the need for updated legislation. Dr. Gonsalves, who holds the portfolio for disaster management, said that between 2010 and 2015, the country lost 700 million EC dollars due to disasters. He said this was during a time when SVG did not experience any hurricanes. The PM said he is aware of the issues surrounding necessary legislation, but pointed out that this has its own loopholes.
It means that your work is even more urgent than ever in every single dimension. This is only one aspect of it, what we are dealing with at this seminar. To up our game, And we have to look at our, well, we are in fact looking at our legislation to see how we can improve the structures which we have. But even when we improve the legislation, we need to make sure, and it's a pretty good law, but there are weaknesses. But we have to work to build the district committees. And the experience has been we should have 40-something, 50 district committees. And some are okay, some are good, and some are bad. And the real difference is local leadership.
In addition, the Prime Minister said that accessing funds to mitigate the effects of climate change has been a challenge for governments. He said that sea defense works were planned for Sandy Bay, but due to the slow process of accessing funds, there have been delays.
You would have heard me talking about we have money for Sandy Bay to do the sea defense, $4 million. I'm talking US money, $3–4 million. But it takes so long with all the assessments and so many hoops you have to go through. By the time it came around to go to the board, I said, but it doesn't make sense this goes to the board of the Caribbean Development Bank, because they have to come and do further assessments. Because nature is not waiting on us or the bank. More disaster is being created. Then Tony, it reached $10 million. And the same thing happened again now. It's a number close to $20 million US. We get in the money. But we have to move quickly with it. Because as the sun rises tomorrow, it will be 25 and then 30.
Prime Minister Gonzalez also pointed to the need for persons to build differently, taking into consideration the changing weather patterns.
That your work is even more urgent than ever in every single dimension. This is only one aspect of it, what we are dealing with at this seminar. To up our game, and we have to look at our, well, we are in fact looking at our legislation to see how we can improve the structures which we have. But even when we improve the legislation, we need to make sure, and it's a pretty good law, but there are weaknesses. But we have to work to build the district committees. And the experience has been we should have 40-something, 50 district committees. And some are okay, some are good, and some are bad. And the real difference is local leadership.
Opposition leader Dr. Godwin Friday said he is concerned that the Police Amendment Bill gives the Police Commissioner wide discretion regarding the recruitment of personnel into the police force. Dr. Friday made this statement in Parliament yesterday as members continued debate on the 2018 Police Amendment Bill. The bill deals with the period of enlistment into the police force until recruits have completed their training period, allowing the period of probation to be pensionable and extending the probationary period to 2 years. Dr. Friday said under the amendment, the Commissioner can at any time terminate the services of a person selected for training on the grounds that he either did not attend the training course, is found not to be of good character and intelligence, or if the person is otherwise unfit to be a member of the police force. The opposition leader said that these provisions can lead to uncertainty among those who are in training and abuse by the Commissioner.
You're in the service, you're being trained, but then you don't get appointed. That, Mr. Speaker, it seems to me is a section that creates some concern because of the broadness of the discretion and because of the the lack of any kind of preparation that the candidate or the recruit can do to avoid being terminated on this particular section. I mean, if you don't know what the criteria are, how do you know that you are meeting the required standard? Usually, you are selected for training, you have certain tests and criteria that you must meet, you meet them, you're in. But here, you can meet all of those criteria, but then the commission can determine that you're not fit. And we don't know what those conditions are. And that to me is a very broad discretion, that there would have to be somehow circumscribed, at least the right of appeal. I see there is some right of appeal for certain persons here. And this is something that, Mr. Speaker, I believe that can be abused or can be used in a way that seems arbitrary to persons who apply.
Dr. Friday said all police from the level of commissioner to the trainee must display good character. He said this would go a long way in improving their image with the public, thus attracting persons of high quality to apply. He said issues of police abuse must also be addressed.
Of brutality being, mete out to suspects or persons, members of the public, complaints that are not resolved. You know, some persons come to me and they complain about things they said that happened to them by the police, and I tell them to write to the Commissioner of Police, because that's where they ought to take it up. And you, Mr. Speaker, have to be very careful that the image of the police service is one that is well protected. And this starts from the top down. This morning we had a question that was asked about the acting commissioner of police, the question about the allegation of beating an inmate or an accused person. And this was a question, it's a serious question that was raised. It has created some public concern. It was there in the newspaper. And this is a matter, Mr. Speaker, that, you know, I was a little disappointed when I heard the Prime Minister say he doesn't have to investigate it.
The opposition leader said any discretionary power must be used for the benefit of the police and the public.
But this is a matter as part of the whole our system of good governance, that where you have high office, an office that requires public trust, a position where persons look up to and turn to for upholding the law and so on. You need people of good character, you need institutions that have good reputation, and you need systems in place to ensure that those qualities are manifest. But also, Mr. Speaker, the discretion when it's exercised, whether by the Minister of National Security or by the Commissioner or any other officer, senior officer below him, that the discretion that they are given, that is exercised in a way that enhances the image of the service, which then helps to motivate other persons to wish to join, to recruit persons to join the service, but also enhances public respect and public trust in such an important institution. Mr. Speaker, as I said...
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves said there are sufficient provisions in place to prevent the police commissioner from acting irrationally in relation to the termination of service of any police recruit. The Prime Minister was responding to the concerns of the Leader of the Opposition over the provisions of the Police Amendment Bill. Dr. Gonsalves said it is necessary for provisions to be in place to ensure that the best persons become policemen and women, and that the police commissioner is the best person to ensure this is done. The Prime Minister used a cricket analogy to illustrate his point.
B is found not to be of good character or lacks intelligence. Mr. Speaker, you know, you could recruit someone and you think they really have good character and that they have intelligence, and you're judging the intelligence from the number of CXCs they have or associate degrees and the like. But you may discover something about their character inside as recruits, which you didn't pick up when you did all the various assessments of that person prior to enlisting them. That's like if the wicketkeeper in the old days, he stopped the ball, honorable member for North Windward, You have a long stop. You remember in the old days? Well, you have to have a long stop. And who is the long stop? The only